I should say. I don't know. Maybe it's good evening where you are. I am Amanda, and I will be here going through a how to play Festo here on Tabletopia. This is a game that Game Brewer released a few years ago in Europe. It's just made its way here to the States recently, within the last 6 months, and it is going to be available for you online direct. And right now at GameBrewer.com, you get free shipping in the US and Canada. I just wanted to get that in there before we get going. And also, I'll be monitoring the chat on Twitch and a little bit on Discord, but mostly on Twitch. If you have any questions, feel free to pop over there through the portal or through the Discord to ask some comments in the chat area, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, let's get going. So Festo, this is a game for 2 to 5 players. I've played at all player counts. It plays very differently, 2 to 5. Not bad at any of the player counts, just different. With 5, it's its most cutthroat, so I thought I'd show you the full scope of the game here. And it is a game where you are trying to collect different ingredients from different markets. So we've got chili peppers and honey and meat and mushrooms, spices and potatoes, and then you're going to turn those into fabulous tasting dishes over here. The game is played in 4 rounds. You can tell which round you're in because each round has its own event card that will change different aspects of the game, and I'll go over those in a bit once you know what they mean. And each of the 4 rounds has different phases. Each round starts out with the preparation phase. The game, when you open it up on Tabletopia, has already been prepped for you. The first player is the only thing left to determine. You can determine that however you wish. So let's say green here is the first player. And the markets all have a new ingredient on them. The markets have been seeded from their general supplies, and the players are ready to begin the shopping phase. Now, the shopping phase has a morning and an afternoon phase to it, and I'll walk you through around here in just a second, but the shopping phases are where the bulk of the game is. It's where you're taking your meeples and you're placing them out on the board, and you're going to be bidding on those different marketplaces. So if in the morning phase, I'm going to bid, that's when I would get to place out my meeples. Once all players have placed all their meeples out and the end of the afternoon phase, we're going to walk through each of the individual markets, determining who's going to get which of the ingredients, if any, from each of the individual different colored markets here. The troll, the pixies, the orcs, the wizards. Was it a wizard? Magician. He's a wizard. Elf and dwarves. And then you can also exchange things at the grocery store, which is sort of like a general area that you may or may not be able to use to the best of your ability. And then we move over into the cooking phase, where people are going to be able to cook the different dishes, and that's where the bulk of the points come in. All right. Let's go over this in detail. So at the start of each round, you're going to try to be getting majorities in each of these different areas. Of course, you won't be able to do that with only 6 meeples, so you have to try to tactically place your pieces. In the morning phase, whoever is the start player is going to begin by rolling both of these die. I guess I'll roll them individually. Sorry, I put them together. But it's a little early in the morning for that. All right, so I rolled 2 6s. That is a bit of an unusual roll, but it's good for us because then we only have to cover up one of the marketplaces. If there had been 2 different numbers, 2 different markets would be closed. That is signaling here in the morning phase of the shopping actions, we are not allowed to place our meeples in the dwarfs market, so that's not a go. I'm allowed to place all of my meeples on my turn at one time, so it's not one place one and the next person places one. Green would decide how many of his 6 meeples he wants to place right now on these 5 spaces. So let's say Green's like, okay, that's great. I like green. I'm going to go through the green market, and I want to put 2 of my meeples in green and I want to put one of my meeples in red, and then I want to save those three because he's waiting to prepare for the afternoon shopping phase where hopefully this market may be open up again. And then it would come over to the yellow player. They would get to choose to place as many meeples as they want. And maybe the yellow player is like, I really want to win red and I don't want anyone else to win red. So I'm going to take this phase and I'm going to put 5 of my meeples there. You probably wouldn't do this, but you might. And then so on and so forth. We go around the table and we'd be adding our meeples to different markets. Now, once everybody has placed all of their meeples for the round, we go into the afternoon phase where these dice are again rolls and we come up with some different outcomes for them. Now we have markets 5 and 4 have been closed. So green is super happy because nobody can compete for that number 5 now, and he is also very happy because the orange section has opened up. And so they're going to take their green meeples, and they're so excited because they now get to place as they planned here. And they're mad at yellow, but they're going to be able to contest for that, so they're just going to maybe try to sneak in here for a little bit of help with the yellow section. And so the turns we continue around the table, everybody be placing all of their meeples. And at the end of the afternoon phase in the shopping section, all of the meeples would have been placed out on the table. Now, I won't go and place all of these as you don't want to watch me place all of these meeples here slowly and painstakingly at one time. We'll just go through what happens. So the individual markets now are going to activate in order from left to right. So we start with the troll market. Let's take a look here a little bit closer. You see there are 4 cubes out here in the center, a little symbol for an action. This was just the die roll for letting us know when it is open or closed. And then this is the general supply for those cubes. The market will first look at how many, let's just gonna move this for example's sake. We look at the meeples that have been placed to this area. If any one player has absolute majority, that means they have more meeples there than any of their other players, they're going to have the ability to choose to take all of the ingredient tiles. Now, if they want to do that, that's fine. They'll just go ahead and select all of them. They take all of those meeples, or those cubes, and they remove their meeples, and that is the end of the cubes. Now, that's not the end of the round, or the end of that market, because these players are sad they don't get any of those cubes. However, there's still a bonus action available to them. Then in player orders, that would go over to green. Green would be able to then move any one cube to any other market. So maybe he was like, oh, I really wanted that red and it didn't get it. So I'm going to actually take one of these red and I'm going to move it over to green, where I'm fairly certain I'm going to win that market. So green has used his bonus action, so he'd remove his meeple, and then yellow would take a look and say, okay, well, I want to move one from the green section out to the market. I don't know why they would do that, but maybe they would. I'm just letting you know that you are able to move them over to the grocery store here. And you could also move them from the grocery store to somewhere else. The only rules for movement within the markets in the grocery store is that you can't move the same cube that a player before you moved this turn. Of course, it's in the future rounds. That's perfectly fine. And then that would be the end of yellow's turn. Now that's what happens when there was an absolute majority and the person who had that absolute majority chose to take all of the ingredient tokens. Let's move on over to these pixies here. Let's pretend this was the outcome. So there's one of each. That means there's not an absolute majority. Neither purple or yellow player has the ability to take all of the pixies' ingredient cubes. So instead, they have to make a choice. Do they want to take one single cube with their one meeple, or do they want to take the bonus action? Now, first, just to be clear, you do have to go from bonus action, and then if you choose to pass on that, and you are left then with the ability to take a cube. But first, they can choose to do the yellow action, or the action of the area that they're in. And for this example, that is moving one other meeple to a different area. So the yellow player is going to choose to move this over to this green section here, which, I mean, green still has the majority there, but green might be thinking, oh, that was a little bit trickier than he thought. He thought he had that all to himself, but he does not. So the uh, uh, sorry, the meeples are going to be placed in that areas, and you're gonna go. Where was I? I'm just gonna get lost. I'm gonna start over. Back over here. He moved his people. Purple's going to also move over here. He's gonna be the only one that's gonna be in the magician area, which is great. He's super happy. All right. Now, let's go over to this. Let's say this had been what was happening here. So purple moved over there to not let the green player have access to all of those blue cubes, and green is now very upset. That is what has happened. So the orcs here are definitely going to go for the red player. Red also has the option, or yellow also has the option, even if they're majority, not to take all of these cubes. If the player who has the majority decides to opt to not take all of them, then it falls into the regular turn order of things, where the majority player would decide if they want to take the special bonus action with one of their meeples. They would do that special bonus action, which in the case of the orcs, that is placing a meeple onto, and I think it can be that meeple, placing a meeple onto one of these dishes, which effectively reserves, like you would see in Splendor or other games where you reserve cards, which happens all the time. But you would reserve that tile for your character, and then it would go back over to purple, and purple would have the choice to do that or pass. Once they've passed, it comes back to yellow. Yellow has 3 meeples. They're not allowed to take all 3. You're only allowed to then take 1 ingredient with any remaining meeples that you have left over. So they put all their meeples there, which was a very silly choice of theirs to take the bonus action and then just 1 cube. Probably normally they would have been going for all the cubes, but that's what they did. And purple stayed back in order to take 1 for themselves as well. All right, moving on to this scenario we set up here for the magicians. These have come off at the start of this round. They don't mean anything. They only mean something for the chopping round. So we look and we see, okay, they're tied. Green is very upset, and purple is very happy that they snuck in there. Because there's no absolute majority, we start with green, who is the start player, and they choose to either take the bonus action or to wait and pass to take a cube. If they take the bonus action, it's going to get them some salt. Salt is wild because you need to flavor your dishes. They can't be too bland tasting. They have to taste nice and yummy. And so he's going to take the salt. Purple, she's going to come over here and she's going to take one of these blue cubes. I'm not sure why she'd take 1 blue cube and not a salt, but she did. So it's fascinating, these choices they're making here today. All right, then we're moving over to the elves. The elves are the ones that Green was so excited to try to get earlier, and they are very excited that they still have the majority. They're going to be able to take all of the cubes in the elf area, and now they are excited because they moved one of those reds that they weren't able to win over here, so they're still able to acquire a red, and so they're going to be able to take all of those, including the one that wasn't initially the color of the area. Just all the cubes that are in there are going to come off for green. And they're done, so they're going to remove all of their meeples. They chose to take all the ingredients. That's the end of their abilities here. Now, yellow is sad because they took all of them, so they're not able to get a green cube, but they're still able to do this little action. And the elf action is that you can exchange 1 colored cube for 2 other colored cubes, and those are with the supply chain. In our scenario, green only has a salt cube, which of course he wouldn't want to trade at all because you can't exchange with salt. But let's pretend he had a green cube from a previously round and he wanted blue or orange. He could exchange those, place this back in the market and take those. Now, maybe he wanted 2 green cubes. They can actually essentially exchange 1 green cube for 2 green cubes. It's a way to get a bulk of the number that you were hoping to get. And we're moving on to the last market here, the dwarf market. This is a market that sort of helps you prepare for the future rounds. In rounds 1, 2, and 3, whoever wins the majority here still can choose to take all of the orange. Oh, you get nauseous, I am. Sorry, there we go. The dwarf market, you can take all of the orange cubes, or you can place out your discs for the future round. Now, this allows that if you choose to do that with your action, say the first action, he's going to do that, they would place out their discs on future markets that will be like a meeple that has already snuck into these markets before the roll of the die, before they're closed off for the morning and the afternoon, setting them up for the next future rounds. If you choose to go on the dwarf in the last phase of the game, of course, there's nothing to prepare for. You would be able to get 2 points for your discs instead. So Green decided to place his 2 discs as his action, and then he's going to take a single orange cube with his remaining meeple. So that's the end of the shopping phase. Oh, sorry, grocery store. I didn't set that up in a fun little example. So purple and green have gone to the marketplace. Let's say green, put 2 of his guys there. Green is doing all sorts of things. All right. In the grocery store, you first look to see whoever has the absolute majority there. Obviously, they're not going to take all of the different colors. Well, not obviously, but they're not going to take all the different colors from each of the different shelves of the grocery store. I'm going to raid the grocery store. They're just going to first be able to take the start player card. Now, this is very important because whoever has the start player card immediately becomes the start player. That means during the cooking phase, when there's the choice of dishes to be made, whoever has that start player card at this point is now going to be able to choose first which of those dishes they want to make, as well as being able to then choose the start player of the next round. We'll come to that in just a second. But right now, it's important to note maybe they wanted it so they could be the first people to choose which of the dishes to cook in the market or the banquet hall. All right, so the grocery store, once they have decided who is the start player, then they're going to be the first to choose which color of the cubes they want. Now, a player can only take cubes from one of the color rows on the grocery store, and they can only take as many cubes as they have meeples. So in this scenario, green would be like, oh, I'm so excited. I wanted green, and purple strangely moved that green cube over here. And they're very excited because they'll have 2 meeples. They get to take 2 cubes from the same colored row, and their action. That leaves purple with pink, yellow, red, blue, or orange, and they're going to decide to take orange. So now purple has selected orange, and green has gotten there too, and we are ready to move on to the cooking phase. There's a few things I should go over here in the cooking area. There are 4 different main types of dishes. We've got the drinks here on the bottom row. Then we've got desserts here, which are a little bit fancier than the drinks. Then we've got kind of the appetizers, soups and salads. And then we have some of the main courses, main dishes up here in the top row, as well as full feasts and banquets that you can serve, which give you even more points. Let's take a look at these. So this one is going to be worth 14 points at the end of the game, and it requires 6 identical colored cubes. So you have to collect a set of 6 of the same. And then we have this one here, which is going to be one of each different colored cube, but it's going to give you 16 points, but it's maybe a little bit harder to achieve, especially here early in the game. The next rows, they're going to have a requirement of 5 cubes, and this is going to be the same rules for the other 4 going down, but it has a color that you can see here on the side. You must exchange 4 orange cubes and then 1 other cube of your choice. Now, note here where it has 2 of those other color choices, you would think it would just be wild, but they must be a second color, but they have to be the same second color. So if I gave in 3 pinks, I would have to give 2 yellows or 2 greens, not 1 green and 1 yellow. I'd have to choose between the 2 and make both of those colors the same color. And so for here, it would be 1 pink and then 3 of any one other color that you want to cook. The second row and the third row, you'll note that there is a color up here that says +1 or +2. That means if you want to be cooking out of this row, this column, I should say, you will need to add another cube of that gray variety to whatever you're doing. So if this one you had chosen to do 4 greens and 1 yellow, we'd actually need to be 2 yellow. And this one, if it was 3 pinks and 1 blue, you would need 4 pinks and 3 blue to bake that right now. So it can be quite expensive to bake from this row, but maybe you have some extra cubes and you want to sneak in there because you really want, you have been saving up those colored cubes forever, and so you might as well just get them now. The end game scoring also rewards you for collecting different groups of tiles. So if you are able to get one of each of them, including the feasts and banquet tiles over here, that would get you a full 21 points at the end of the game. And this is also in-game scoring. All your leftover ingredients that you didn't manage to use are going to be worth a point. Now, there's a couple other things to note. One is in both. Oops, sorry. Let's make y'all a little seasick here. Moving on over here. In any game, no matter if you're playing the basic version or the more advanced version, you'll be playing with the event cards. Now, the event cards are going to be turned over at the start of each round as part of that preparation phase that was already set up for you here on Tabletopia for your first round. One card will be flipped over, and that gives a one rule change that will affect all players for the entire phase. So this card that we have here says that you are, when cooking at the end, you may pay one less ingredient of your choice when preparing that dish. So they're pretty straightforward. There's, I think, 15 of them in the game. You only play with 4, so they're always just a little bit differently set up. And like all Game Brewer games, we like to try to remove language requirements because it's a company based in Belgium and there's lots of different languages in Europe and around the world. So they try to not put text on there, but rather have either language references if you need in your game or online. But most of the symbols are pretty easy to follow. This one is for each of the different dishes that you might be cooking in the cooking phase. You're going to get an extra point. And this one is you're going to, when you take the wizard's bonus action, instead of taking the cubes from the magician's area, you're going to be able to actually also steal a cube from another player. All right, I don't need to go through all of those, but I will come back here because I just remembered I forgot one thing. You're allowed to cook more than one dish during that cooking phase, but it will start with the player who took that start player token in the grocery store and then move around the table in clockwise fashion. You're allowed to only cook one dish at a time. So if you're that first player, you have the pick of one, then it goes to the next player, they can cook one, and back onto you, and you can continue cooking as long as you have cubes to continue preparing the dishes. Now, the one exception, as we saw earlier, is yellow has reserved this one. They're really excited to make this dish. If they do not prepare that dish and cook that dish this round, their meeple will stay on that tile. At the end of the phase, all the different dishes that have been cleaned will be creating some empty areas here, and the cooked dishes will slide over, making them a little bit cheaper if you're waiting for them, and then the new tiles will come on out. Oh, I just flipped all of them. That was an example of how to flip a whole stack of tiles in Tabletopia. Don't do that. And move over a tile, and it should just flip automatically because it's clever like that, cleverer than I. And then you refill up the rows so that you have a fresh plate of dishes to cook for the future round. Now, I said we'd come back to this start player card, so whoever took that in the previous round, which was green from their grocery store prowess there, they are going to choose who is going to be the start player for the round. That has control with seeing who goes where in the shopping phase. So it's quite possible that you don't want to go first. Maybe you want to go second, so you would give it to the player to your left, or perhaps you want to go maybe somewhere in the middle and you can give it to another player that's a little bit in the middle of the pack. And it's things like this that make the two-player game just a little bit different, as there's not a whole lot of people to go before or after you. The marketplaces don't tend to get overly competitive, but it's a quicker play, but still very tactical in how you're placing and trying to collect those sets to cook the dishes. The last thing that we have to cover before we can meet up on Discord to even just get going and maybe play some of this game is the more advanced version, which is when you buy one of these dishes, instead of just taking it in front of you and now having those points for the end of the game, you would actually still get those points at the end of the game, but you would flip it over, and now during the game, you're going to have a special action that will help you throughout the game, and it can be different based on color and that sort of thing. This one, you know what colors are going to be based on what colors cubes that you were playing, so there's never like a surprise there. This one is purple, for example. If we just this one flipped over, it would be orange. It's a little hard to see there because I have to zoom in. It's not this color you're looking at, but the color behind the X on the cube. So this one is saying that when you're cooking dishes, you do not have to pay one of the orange cube. If it requires orange, you can choose to skip paying one of those orange cube requirements. And so this is you can skip paying one of those purple cube requirements. And that's what the rule is on all of the dishes for purple. And the orange dishes are letting you know that anytime that you are cooking a blue dish or using a blue ingredients to cook a dish, you can get an extra point. There's no score track, but there's a pile of points that you'll be able to collect from. Most of the points are just scored on your tiles at the end of the game, but you will collect some of these throughout the game to be able to give you some extra points. So you would get 2 points here. Let me write this up. There you go. So that is when you are doing the green. You get, or sorry, the orange, you get a point. Green, whenever you're taking an ingredient cube of a specific color, you're going to get a point. So this one is when you're taking red cubes, you're going to get a single point. And this one is whenever you are the absolute majority in an area, and this is not color specific with any market, you're going to get a point. So that's rewarding you for having majorities even more than that already afforded you in the game. But of course, these are the harder to cook dishes, so you probably won't have as many of them. There are no bonuses for these big ones. They're just worth a whole lot of points at the end of the game. So once you've advanced through 4 rounds of play, of course you're clearing up everything except those discs in between rounds, but you take all of your meeples back. You're able to store your ingredients here on your card, and you get going by rolling the die then for the shopping phase of the next round. This even comes with some of those little reminders letting you know what to do during each of the different phases. So it's make sure the markets, I didn't go over that. Make sure the markets have, see, it's good. There was a card to remind me, but you want to make sure there are cubes down here. You always are going to add 3. Now with a 5-player game, I believe you add 4. This appears to be the board for the 2 to 4 player that's here on Tabletopia. For the 5-player, I'm not sure there's a different version, but really the only difference is you're adding in more cubes here during the phase in preparation. All right, there we go. Boop, like that. So you'd make sure all of the cubes come down from their markets. They are going to be going back and forth and spent, so you should not run out there to be seeding it for each round. Let's see if these cards remind me of any other rules that I have forgotten to share with you today. Yes, you make sure that all of the new cooking dishes have come out. You've turned over a new event tile. Then you move on to the morning shopping phase where you close off some markets and you bid. And then in the afternoon, you close off different markets and you bid. And then in the 3rd phase of the game is where you go through each of the markets and you're able to take first the specials and then the cubes and then the marketplace, the grocery store as well. And then the 4th section is the cooking phase, where you're exchanging your cubes to cook those dishes, 1 dish at a time, but as many dishes as you're able, just as long as you only do 1 in turn order. And that is Festo. So I hope you're able to follow along with most of that. We're going to meet up on Discord if you want. Right now, I will try to drop a little in the chat here shortly, and so you'll be able to join us over on the Game Brewer Discord channel, and hopefully I'll meet you there. We'll break up into tables, and I'm happy to play a round or two, a few games of Festo. Thank you very much, and happy Gen Con!